ahead and touch on the timing belts and the exhaust camshaft variators. I just wanted to go over a few things real quick though with what that kind of all entails. So we have the camshaft variators, the exhaust ones. Here's the green dot on both of these, okay? There's also, if you look at the bulletin or the campaign, which you can find online, this one says 4B right here, and this one I believe says 4A. In the campaign, it gives you a listing of the letters and the numbers there, and it says, you know, hey, if it doesn't have the green dot and it doesn't fall within these or it's not stamped as so, then it will basically tell you don't use it. Here's the part number for it, guys, 190042. You need obviously 2 of them, 1 for each cam gear. We've got our timing belt tensioner bearing adjustment tool right here. We've got brand new tensioners, right? Cam seals, and we have some tensioner bolts, these updated bolts, which go to, I think it's this one is the, when you're looking at the front of the motor, this is the right side, I think, the tensioner. Anyway, so we have all those components. We also took our 3D printed model for our Variator tool, this, and we actually printed it out with stainless. So we're gonna go ahead and use this tool. It doesn't quite fit on there perfectly the way I wanted it to, so we're gonna make some more adjustments, but let me see if I can show you guys. It fits on like this. There is a little bit of a gap. I may actually have to make the inside here a little bit taller so that it'll actually fit a little better. I'm gonna go ahead and try, when we get to that point, I'm gonna go ahead and try to take the variators off using this tool, and we'll see how that pans out. I need to get some probably grade 8 or grade 10 bolts or something, or hex bolts for this, something super strong, because that's gonna take the brunt of the force. But anyway, we have those tools. I printed it out. I'm gonna see how it works out, and if it works out well, guys, I may offer those to you guys through the channel if you guys need them, and we'll see how that goes. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take out all the spark plugs out of the motor, and we're gonna rotate everything over and try to line up all the timing marks. And then I'll go into detail kind of like what you need to look for when you're rotating the motor to kind of line these marks up to ensure that it's where it basically needs to be before you start pulling off timing belts and all that stuff and pulling off tensioners and all that. So let's dive in. So the next step here is inside the car. Let me show you guys real quick. Let me get a light. So I have marks on here still, okay? And they line up here, and these red ones at the top probably were set up with the timing belt at some point earlier. You know, when this, and it's earlier in the car's life, you know, when this timing belt was first put on. But so you need to basically get a 36 millimeter socket. If you've got the motor lined up, if you take a look here at the back of the camshafts, I don't know if you can see this here. Let me see if I can position the light so you can kind of see. This is kind of a pain in the butt. Right here, you've got on the markings of the cam caps, and it should be scribed right there. And here as well, on the exhaust cam. You're also gonna see the same thing on the other set of cams on the other side of the motor. So here, and this is kind of upside down, sorry, but same concept. Scribed on the cam, lines up with the marking on the back of the cam cap here, okay? Also, there are other markings. Those aren't the only ones. So if you look at the cam caps that actually hold the front end of the cams by the cam sprockets, you're gonna see here and here. And that actually lines up with on the camshaft in here. You can see it. It's gonna be hard to see it here with this light, but you'll see a marking there, inside there that lines up with this, okay? So as long as your cam markings on the back of the cams here on the cam caps line up with the scribes and the camshafts, and then you can see on the front cam caps there by the timing gears or the timing sprockets that those line up as well. And then you can obviously test cylinder number 1 right over here to see if it actually is at top dead center. There is a tool for doing that. I didn't have it here in time to show you guys, so I apologize for that, but I'll put a link in the description for that top dead center kit. You can get them, I think, actually, I want to say eBay or Amazon, but there's also, Hill Engineering makes a kit as well. It's super expensive, but it covers a wide variety of spark plug threads for different motors. So now that the markings on the camshafts are all lined up, and you've got the cam sprockets that look like they're lined up with whatever markings are already there, and you feel confident, the next step is you want to lock the crankshaft in place, okay? If that moves in relation to those cams, you're in trouble. This is a 3D printed tool that will lock the flywheel, okay? I have never used this one before, so I don't know if this is just gonna bolt right in place with this in the position that the motor's already in and keep all the marks lined up or not. I have no idea. We're gonna find that out. But basically what you do is you take the inspection plate off and you've got holes here where you use the same hardware, and this goes up against the flywheel, the teeth, and locks it. And this was printed with 100% infill. I think the guy who created this, I think his name is East Memphis, said that basically you can do 80% infill or whatever, but I did 100 just to kind of, you know, make sure that it was as strong as it could be. We're gonna try and see if this will just bolt in place and I won't have to move anything. If I do have to move something, what I'm gonna do is bolt this in place and get it so that it's locked on the crankshaft at least. And then on the cam side of things, what I'll probably do is use a paint marker before I do anything else. And basically do a paint marker on the back of the cam caps there, on the back side here, to kind of get yourself some marks that you know can perfectly line up, because those scribes are hard to see, honestly, the factory scribes. And then anything on the front cam caps that you can mark to kind of make sure that those are lined up as well. As many markings as you can. So we'll put this on, we'll break that crank pulley bolt loose, we'll take the crank pulley off, and the crankshaft should be locked in place at that point. Our cams, we can use a few different tricks to kind of keep those locked in place as well. You could basically use like a business card on like, you take the center cam cap off on one of the cams, stick a business card in there, and then basically put the cam cap back on and just snug it tight with like a 1/4 inch drive ratchet. You don't have to torque it down really hard, but enough that you've basically tightened the cam cap back down. That will make it so that the cam is not going to move. Once this is all done basically, and you have the variators swapped, the cams are back in, the timing belt's back on, all the tensioner stuff's done, you're gonna need to turn the motor over to make sure the markings all line up, right? So it's kind of hard to do that because you can't necessarily take the crank pulley bolt and just thread it into the end of the crank and just start turning. That's why this exists. It gives you the ability to fit a socket on there, and you can basically go ahead and still turn the crankshaft once you have the timing belts all on there, so that you can make sure all the marks line up, everything looks good on the back of the cam caps and the scribe marks and any of the markings you put on there with a paint marker, and you can kind of check your work. But let's get started. Let's go ahead and put on this this crankshaft locking tool so that we can also break the crank pulley bolt loose and see where things go. All right, so in order to basically take off this plate that I've got right here that I've already taken off, you're gonna need a 3mm hex, 1/4 inch drive, and we'll take these out. All of the screws that I took out here, I wanna say 3 out of 4 of them were pretty mangled up. I don't know why they were, but I'm gonna have to replace these because they're obviously messed up. For the tool, where is it at? I think it's right here. This tool, to put this on, you're gonna need at least a minimum of 2 of those 3mm hex bolts to hold it in, just to hold this in place basically. Okay, so we're gonna see if this thing fits in. Okay, it does not look like it lines up. It looks like it's literally teeth connecting to teeth, they're touching. Let me see if I can show you guys. So, as you can see, out of the box it didn't line up. I'm gonna have to rotate the crankshaft a little bit, which is not the end of the world, but let's see if we can get that done. It's locked in place and the teeth line up, and we have fasteners in there. These fasteners are junk, they need to be replaced. These are actually kind of stripped out on almost all of them, I would say, except for maybe one. So they need to get replaced. But anyway, the other thing we need to do is on the back of the cams here, we need to actually mark with the scribes and the actual notches here in the cam caps with a red paint marker. So we're about to do that. Let me climb in here and show you the timing belts real quick. I marked them here. These are the original marks. I just kind of went over them a little bit here. And then I actually marked the belt and the gear here. Same thing over here on this side. Now, obviously these belts are not gonna stay on the motor. We're gonna swap those out. However, we do need some sort of a reference point. I'm gonna go ahead and mark these real quick and I'll show you guys the process of pulling these cams out, which is really easy. It's self-explanatory, guys, but let's get started. So as you can see, we've got the exhaust cam reinstalled. Right here, the marks line up. The left side is the intake cam right there. That's perfectly fine. It didn't move. We didn't touch it. The right-hand side, obviously, we removed the exhaust cam itself. We took off that cam cap there and put a business card as well, just so that we could lock it in place. So now that cam should not move at all. So let me show you something here, though. Let me get inside the car. So one thing you can see right here on the exhaust cam sprocket, it rotates, obviously. I left it loose. However, you'll notice that these marks do not line up anymore. So one thing to note, though, is when we replaced the cam variator, the exhaust cam variator, when we retorqued it onto the camshaft, it actually is a lower torque spec. So naturally, it's not gonna line exactly right back up the mounting holes for the cam sprocket where the original one was, okay? So that's a problem. Theoretically, since the camshafts are locked in place in the cylinder head, the crankshaft is locked in place and hasn't moved, right? Basically, those marks don't really mean anything anymore, which is fine. Now, it might, obviously the cam might not be in the exact perfect spot it was when we took it out, but that's something that gets solved later on when we degree the motor and we get the cams. We can adjust the sprockets slightly just to get them perfect for the valves to open and close exactly when they need to. We can cover that later on in another video, and I'll show you guys that. But for now, what we need to go ahead and do is we need to go ahead and take out the intake camshaft by itself and just basically swap out the cam seal and then put the cam right back in and then throw the timing belt back on it. And then that will basically complete that one side of the motor. Okay, so I swapped out the intake cam, the seal on it. All I did was basically unbolt the cam, take it out, go ahead and put a new seal on it, put the cam back in and torque everything down, put some business cards in there to kind of lock it in place. Now, There is something I need to show you guys. So if you're having a problem trying to get these things lined up and you can't get them to stay in one place, this is gonna be your friend. This is a 27mm wrench, okay? And despite my better judgment here, like I hate doing this, but it's the only option you have sometimes. So if you look at the wrench, make sure you don't have any grooves on the inside of the wrench on either side, right? Okay. What you do is you get a 27mm wrench. It's big enough to fit over the cam lobe with the pointy part of it facing up. And then you stick this on here and you can kind of rotate it, okay? Like I said, make sure this isn't one of those non-slip wrenches where you've got grooves, you know, right up in here, like at the tips or halfway down, okay? I know that's a common thing these days for people, so they bite onto like nuts and bolts and like you can easily get stuff off so it doesn't slip, but don't use anything like that. That's gonna damage your cam. But let me show you guys real quick. I'm not gonna actually adjust it, but I'll show you. Fits here over the lobe, and you'll notice it'll stop right about there in the corner. And you can kind of rotate it and actually move or hold the cam, okay? Guys, this is not ideal. Obviously, you don't want to be putting tools on, you know, machine surfaces like that so that you don't, you know, scratch it up or dent it up or mar it up or anything like that. But sometimes you have no choice, and if you do it properly and you're not just beating on it, it's gonna be fine. Another option that you guys can use, if you don't want to use the 27mm wrench, you can use this kind of rigged up method here. There are 2 flat spots on the end of both camshafts, right? So all of these are lined back up. Like I said, those are the marks right there that you kind of want to keep lined up with the cam cap there that holds the variators in at the front end. If you can't get the cams lined up and you're trying to get the base notch in the cam lined up with the cam cap at the front end of the motor, which honestly is probably the best one to line it up to if you're popping the cam gears off. It's going to be the most accurate base setting, so to speak. What you can do is use your phone. If you just zoom in with your phone when you put it on video, you don't have to record or anything, but obviously you can see a lot better. You zoom in. But basically that'll help you kind of line up that notch in the cap versus what's actually on the camshaft. Let me show you what I'm talking about real quick. So take a look here. This might be kind of a pain, but here's the exhaust cam. And if I zoom in, you can kind of see if it's lined up or not. You got to get a straight down view as much as you possibly can. This is about as close as I can probably get it as a base setting. As you can see, we've got the cam gears here. This one is loose still, the exhaust cam. We're gonna leave it this way because we're actually gonna adjust it here a little bit to kind of lock things down in a good, desirable place. Remember, the marks don't necessarily matter here anymore, okay? Ideally, we wanna get it pretty much in the center here, like this, and lock it down pretty close to where it initially was. So what you wanna do, obviously slip the belt onto the crank first, down here. All right, okay, and then it'll come up over here. All right, this part gets to be kind of a pain in the butt, guys. So, best thing you can do is take all the slack out of here, down here, and you want this to be all the slack here because this is your eccentric pulley. This is what you basically adjust. This is where your slack is, and that's where you're gonna make the adjustments. And then once you're done, you basically pull out your grenade pin or your tensioner pin, whatever you wanna call it. And there's a measurement here that you need to basically make sure that it falls within a certain range to kind of make sure that this isn't too extended, essentially. Belt's on. As you can see though, you obviously this was loose. I rotated it this direction to take out any of the slack in the belt here. So even though the marks on the front cam cap here that holds down the variators and in the very, very back, those all line up. All the markings are as perfect as we could get them. You're still gonna have to loosen this and adjust this a little bit, basically, to get this to take out the slack 100%. You don't want slack here or here. Your slack is gonna start right about here and all into here, okay? So you will have to adjust this. Okay, so we have our timing belt eccentric adjustment tool here from Hill Engineering. Essentially what you wanna do, place it in here in such a way. So you're gonna wanna basically rotate it out this way to take out the slack. You wanna put some tension, it's gonna put tension on here. Now when you do this, rotate it, you should be able to pull this little grenade pin or this little pin here and the tensioner, and it should be able to freely move in and out like this. That's when you wanna lock this down to about, I'd have to look again, but I wanna say, I think it's like 50 Newton meters or so. So let's see if we can go ahead and do that. All right, let's see. Okay, now, since that's done, this gets torqued to 50 Newton meters. We need to basically take, strum these, essentially this, and add the two values together to see if it's within a certain hertz range, and see if it falls within there. And that will let us know that the tension is proper or not. Before I can do that though, I have to actually go ahead and do the other side, the timing belt over here, and then torque all this stuff down. These need to be, the eccentric bearing needs to be torqued down, and I need to torque down, oh, my light's dying. Torque these down without any sort of Loctite or anything, which the manual suggests that you use. We're just not gonna do that yet because we're still probably gonna need to make some adjustments later. But anyway, we'll torque everything down. We'll take out the plate that locks the crankshaft in place, and then we'll rotate the motor over a couple times, check that all the timing marks line back up on the camshafts on the back here on the Variator cam cap and on the rear cam caps on all cams, and we should be good to go. I went ahead and tried to remove the other Variator, and it gave me a ton of trouble. It was extremely stubborn. I tried this in a vise. I tried with a breaker bar with an extension, and it just kept slipping on, the cam kept slipping. And I almost damaged the hell out of the cam. I decided that's not worth it. I'm gonna go ahead and try to do this, by cutting and see what happens, and success. This seems to be the way to go, at least when you get one that's really stubborn. So for any of you guys that run into this problem, take the snap ring out of the back of the Variator, slide the housing off, and you'll be left with basically this. And you basically just cut all the way up to the base of this. Don't obviously get into the cam, or you're really gonna have some problems. But just once you get it thin enough, use a vice grips and just break these pieces off slowly. And then eventually slide this back onto here, right? Slide this back on. And then you can basically use like the 32 millimeter socket for this, or whatever tool, if you built one, to take this off. And it should come off pretty easy. That's gonna be your best bet, guys. Okay guys, so what I'm gonna go ahead and do then is I'm actually gonna go ahead and check the tension on the belts and go ahead and rotate the motor over a few times. And we'll check out the actual cam timing in one of the next videos or so. As you guys can see, if you're not doing Variators, this job is a heck of a lot simpler. If you're doing just a timing belt swap, you can just use vice grips, kind of like the manual states, and you can lock the cam gears and then just swap the belts and then be done with it. You'll probably still need that crankshaft locking tool. And I think that's about it. But otherwise, like I said, it's much, much simpler if you're just swapping a belt and doing tensioner bearings and stuff like that, or tensioners. The Variators, it gets a little bit more complicated, and you're also gonna have to loosen the cam gears or the sprockets on intake and exhaust cams. So basically, like I said, it's more involved, and you'll have to actually line up all the marks and everything and be very, very precise. put your cam gears where you need to put them so that you can take out the slack in the belt, and then, you know, make sure the motor rotates over a few times and everything's good, and then you got to degree the motor basically. Guys, I think that's going to do it for this one here. Thank you very much for watching. If you guys made it this far, please like, comment, subscribe, guys. That lets me know if you guys like this kind of stuff and you want me to keep doing this. If you like it, let me know. I guess I'll catch you guys on the next one.